This video is going to review Lohfink 67 to 74 on the Exodus experience. And the main theme is going to be escaping religiosity. So Lohfink points out here how the Egyptian pharaoh state epitomized religiosity. The pharaoh was seen as the representative or the very presence of the sun god. And he was seen as the source of life. The state and nature were succinct. They actually thought like it was through the pharaoh that water was brought to Egypt. And so the pharaoh was the center of all their lives. They felt completely dependent on the state, right? Which pharaoh was the head. And to rebel against the state would be seen as some kind of act of like just embracing of chaos, because they thought without Pharaoh, they wouldn't have water, they wouldn't have food, they wouldn't have all the things they needed. Remember, they had regular famines there, so they knew what it was like when nature didn't supply for them. Typical cycles of famine in the Nile Basin. So the Egyptian state is kind of the epitome of this religiosity, where the forces of nature are worshipped, right? Where the desire of the state is worshipped, and in this case, then that's also the desire of the rich and powerful. Well, actually, that's usually almost every case. And many of the people were taught to think of themselves as slaves or complete dependence on on the king, the royal family, and those who had some special relationship, right? It was certainly not what we see in the call to be the people of God. It was certainly a system in which some people owned the other people, right? Where a few people owned everything and everybody else. So there were several allusions to ways that people could escape such oppression in the book of Exodus here. And we saw that a kind of passive resistance where the people said, well, I'm not going to participate in the evils of the state. I'm not going to participate in the oppressive ways. We saw that with the midwives, and when they refused to kill the Israelite babies. And that's good. They're not saying that's wrong. They're saying that's just, Lohfink is saying that did not grant them liberty. That did not allow them to escape from the religiosity. They were still slaves, and they were still taught to think of themselves and others as undignified beings. Right? Counterviolence. We see when Moses. We see an example or an allusion to that when Moses slays the Egyptian. This doesn't work either. We've already talked about that, right? You can't use force to create a free and loving society. Killing someone is not freeing them or loving them. And finally, there's another interesting one here put out about free space within the system. That if they were given just some space to act as a free and loving society, which was represented in their desire to have festivals, some festival time in the wilderness. Of course, they weren't granted that. But Lohfink said this is the most tempting, that we kind of sit back in our little churches or in our little faith or friend groups, and we do good things there, but we continue to reap the benefits of the corrupt system, and so we continue to contribute to it, right? We don't really escape it. We continue to be part of this system that is enslaving or oppressing some for the benefits of others. So how do they escape? Right? Well, they leave. right? And that's the reason I always put it. I've been putting like this in our review, is that they abandon it, or they escape. In other words, they leave and they set up a new society. Right? The society of free and loving persons. Right? That's the people of God. POG, right? And so that's what God does. God frees them from slavery in Egypt. He convinces Moses, the Israelites, and eventually the Pharaoh, to let them go. And so they escape. And they go out into the desert. They go out into no man's land. And it's in an act of trust, right, where God frees them from slavery in Egypt. They leave. Right? He leads them out of the system and gives them a new land, a new pattern of society, a new social project, which is going to bring us to our next section, the Torah as social project, which is a new social order. So again, we're going to get into this more in our next review section, but it's not just that he frees them from slavery in Egypt. He gives them a new and better way of living, right? Again, it's not, we see time and time again in our recent history where one tyrant is overthrown. And what happens? We just have more tyrannical activity popping up, civil wars and other tyrants popping up to give some stability to the regions. It doesn't work. It's not enough just to leave. They're going to leave and start something different. So what does God want to give them? He wants to give them that society of free and loving people, right? A voluntary community. Of dignified beings, right? In the image and likeness of God. Right? He wants to give them a chance to be like him. That's what he's doing all this for. Give us a chance to be like him, to share in his joy. Because he himself is a community of loving persons. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Okay, I hope this helps. Study for the final.